I still remember that moment like it was yesterday, standing in my childhood bedroom, staring at the acceptance letter in my hands while my parents' voices echoed from downstairs. They were discussing my future, and from what I could hear, they had already decided what was best for me. But something deep inside me was screaming that they were wrong. That inner voice, that gut feeling, that instinct, whatever you want to call it, was telling me to take a completely different path. And for the first time in my life, I was about to learn just how powerful trusting that voice could be. Growing up in a traditional household meant that success was defined very clearly. Good grades, prestigious university, stable career, marriage, house, kids, the whole package laid out like a roadmap that everyone expected me to follow without question. My parents had immigrated to this country with nothing but dreams and determination, and they saw education as the golden ticket to the American dream. When I graduated high school with a 4.2 GPA and got accepted into pre-med at a top-tier university, everyone was thrilled. My extended family called to congratulate me, teachers patted themselves on the back for preparing me so well, friends envied the path that seemed so clearly laid out ahead of me. But I felt like I was suffocating. Every time someone asked me about my plans to become a doctor, I felt this strange knot in my stomach. Not excitement, not pride, just this heavy, sinking feeling that I was walking toward a life that wasn't mine. I tried to push the feeling away, telling myself I was just nervous about the challenge ahead. After all, shouldn't I be grateful for this opportunity that so many people would kill for? The summer before college, I spent countless hours researching medical schools, reading about different specializations, trying to find something that would spark genuine interest, but nothing clicked. I would close my laptop feeling more confused and anxious than when I started. Meanwhile, I found myself spending hours sketching, writing stories, and creating digital art projects that nobody knew about. I had started a small blog where I shared my thoughts on design and creativity, and it was gaining a modest following. But whenever someone caught me working on these projects, they would smile indulgently and say something like, "That's a nice hobby, but make sure you don't let it distract you from your real studies." Real studies. Those words stung every time I heard them because they implied that the things I was passionate about weren't real, weren't valuable, weren't worth pursuing. 3 weeks into my first semester, I was sitting in organic chemistry, staring at molecular structures that might as well have been hieroglyphics. The professor was passionate about the subject, his eyes lighting up as he explained chemical bonds and reactions. I watched him with fascination, not because I understood or cared about chemistry, but because I was witnessing someone who was clearly living their purpose. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just bored or struggling with difficult material, I was in the wrong place entirely. After class, I called my high school art teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. She had always encouraged my creative work, even when others dismissed it as a hobby. I told her about my dilemma, and her response changed everything. "Honey," she said, "I've been teaching for 23 years, and I can always tell when a student is following their heart versus following expectations. Your art has something special. It has your soul in it. When you showed me those digital designs last year, your whole face lit up. I've never seen you light up like that when talking about biology or chemistry." That conversation planted a seed. For the first time, someone I respected was telling me that my instincts might be worth listening to. I started researching graphic design programs, art schools, and creative careers. The more I learned, the more excited I became. I would stay up late reading about successful designers, studying their portfolios, and imagining what my future could look like if I had the courage to change course. But every time I thought about having that conversation with my parents, my stomach would twist into knots. The conversation I had been dreading finally happened during Thanksgiving break. I had been quieter than usual, and my mother noticed. She sat down next to me on the couch and asked if everything was okay with school. I took a deep breath and told her I was thinking about changing my major. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Then came the questions, delivered with the kind of controlled panic that only a concerned parent can muster. "Change to what exactly?" "Graphic design," I said quietly. Graphic design? My father had joined the conversation. What kind of career is that? How will you support yourself? How will you support a family someday? What followed was a 3-hour discussion that felt more like an intervention. They pulled out statistics about unemployment rates for art majors. They reminded me of the sacrifices they had made to give me opportunities. They talked about security, stability, and the importance of having a real profession. "This is just a phase," my mother said. "Everyone gets overwhelmed in college. You'll get through the hard classes, and then you'll appreciate having a secure career." But the more they talked, the more certain I became that they were wrong. Not wrong about their concerns, those were valid. Not wrong about the challenges I would face, those were real. They were wrong about me. They were trying to fit me into a mold that felt like a straitjacket, and my instincts were screaming that I needed to break free. That night, I made a decision that terrified me. I was going to trust my gut, even if it meant disappointing the people I loved most. Changing majors turned out to be just the beginning. The academic advisor in the art department looked at my transcript and explained that I would need to essentially start over. Different prerequisites, different timeline, different everything. My parents stopped paying for my education. It wasn't out of malice, they genuinely believed that cutting off financial support would force me to come to my senses and return to pre-med. But their strategy backfired. Instead of making me reconsider, it forced me to become completely self-reliant and more determined than ever. I moved out of the dorms and into a tiny apartment with 3 roommates. I worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a coffee shop and another doing basic graphic design work for local businesses. My days started at 5 a.m. and ended well past midnight. I was exhausted, broke, and stressed, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. The coursework was challenging in a completely different way than pre-med had been. Instead of memorizing information that felt disconnected from my life, I was learning skills that I could immediately apply and see results from. When I stayed up late working on a design project, it wasn't because I was procrastinating or struggling, it was because I was genuinely excited about what I was creating. My professors noticed a difference too. Professor Chen, who taught my design fundamentals class, pulled me aside after a few weeks. "I can tell you're working harder than most of my students," she said. "But more importantly, I can see that you're passionate about this. That combination is rare and valuable." Those words meant more to me than any grade I had ever received. Not everyone was supportive of my decision. Extended family members would ask pointed questions at gatherings. "So, are you still doing that art thing?" they would say, as if it were a temporary hobby I would eventually outgrow. Some of my pre-med classmates thought I was crazy. "You're throwing away a guaranteed career for what?" one of them asked. "You could be making 6 figures in a few years, and instead you're going to be a starving artist?" Even some of my new classmates questioned my commitment. Because I had started later and was working so much, I didn't have the same technical background that many of them had developed over years of art classes. I had to work twice as hard to catch up, and some people interpreted my intense focus as desperation rather than determination. The worst part was the inner doubt that crept in during my lowest moments. When I was living on ramen noodles and couldn't afford new art supplies, when I failed a project that I had worked on for weeks, when I saw my former pre-med classmates posting about their successes on social media, those were the times when I wondered if everyone else had been right. But then something would happen that reminded me why I had made this choice. A client would love a design I had created. A professor would use my work as an example for other students. I would finish a project and feel that deep satisfaction that comes from creating something meaningful. Those moments kept me going. My junior year, I entered a design competition sponsored by a major tech company. I almost didn't submit my entry. Imposter syndrome was telling me I wasn't good enough, that I was still too far behind my classmates who had been studying art their whole lives. But Professor Chen encouraged me to enter. "The worst thing that can happen is you don't win," she said, "but you'll never know what's possible if you don't try." I spent 3 weeks on my submission, a complete brand identity for a fictional sustainable fashion company. I researched market trends, developed a comprehensive style guide, and created everything from logos to packaging designs to social media templates. When I submitted it, I tried not to think about it too much. I had learned not to get my hopes up about things I couldn't control. 2 months later, I got an email that changed everything. I had won 3rd place in the national competition, and the prize included a $5,000 scholarship and a summer internship at the company's design headquarters in San Francisco. I read the email 3 times before it sank in. Then I called the only person I knew would understand the magnitude of this moment. "Mrs. Rodriguez," I said when she answered, "remember when you told me my art had something special? I think you might have been right." The internship was everything I had hoped it would be and more. I worked alongside senior designers who had been in the industry for decades. I learned about client relationships, project management, and the business side of design. Most importantly, I gained confidence in my abilities and my instincts. My supervisor, Sarah, became an unexpected mentor. During my last week, she took me out for coffee and shared some advice that I'll never forget. When I started in this industry 15 years ago, everyone told me I was crazy to leave my marketing job to become a designer, she said. They said I was too old, that I had missed my chance, that I should be grateful for the stable career I already had. But I had this feeling that I was meant to be creating things, not just promoting other people's creations. She paused and looked at me seriously. The people who succeed in creative fields aren't necessarily the ones with the most natural talent or the best connections. They're the ones who trust their instincts enough to keep going when everyone else thinks they should quit. My senior year, everything started to come together. The combination of technical skills I had developed, real-world experience from my internship, and the unique perspective I brought from my unconventional path made me stand out in ways I hadn't expected. I was hired for a part-time position at a design agency while still finishing school. My portfolio was strong enough to get interviews at companies I had only dreamed of working for. Most importantly, I felt confident in my identity as a designer and creative professional. The moment that really drove home how much I had grown came during a family dinner. My cousin, who was struggling with her own career decisions, asked me how I had known that graphic design was the right choice. I didn't know for certain, I told her honestly, but I knew that staying in pre-med felt wrong. Sometimes trusting your instincts isn't about being sure you're making the right choice, it's about being sure you're not making the wrong one. My parents, who had gradually become more supportive as they saw my success, exchanged a look across the table. Later that evening, my mother pulled me aside. "I owe you an apology," she said. "When you changed majors, I thought you were being impulsive and throwing away your future. I was so focused on the security of the path we had planned for you that I couldn't see that it wasn't really your path at all." She paused, and I could see her struggling with the words. "I'm proud of you for having the courage to trust yourself when we couldn't trust you," she continued, "and I'm sorry it took me so long to see that you were right." That conversation meant more to me than any professional recognition I had received. Looking back on this journey, I've learned several important lessons about trusting your instincts when everyone else doubts you. First, instincts aren't the same as impulses. My decision to change majors wasn't a sudden whim. It was the result of months of feeling fundamentally misaligned with the path I was on. True instincts tend to be persistent and consistent, not fleeting or based on temporary emotions. Second, trusting your instincts doesn't mean ignoring practical considerations. I had to develop a realistic plan for supporting myself financially. I had to work harder than my peers to catch up on skills I hadn't developed earlier. I had to be strategic about building experience and connections in my new field. Following your gut doesn't mean throwing caution to the wind. It means being smart about pursuing the path that feels right. Third, the people who doubt you often do so out of love and concern, not malice. My parents weren't trying to sabotage my dreams. They were trying to protect me from what they saw as unnecessary risk and potential failure. Understanding their motivations helped me respond with patience rather than anger, which ultimately strengthened our relationship. Fourth, External validation is nice, but internal alignment is essential. Winning the design competition and getting positive feedback from mentors felt great, but the real reward was the deep satisfaction of doing work that felt meaningful and authentic. Even during the difficult times, I never experienced the soul-crushing misery I had felt in pre-med classes. Fifth, your unique path can become your greatest strength. The factor I came to design later and through an unconventional route gave me perspectives and skills that many of my classmates didn't have. I understood the business world in ways that helped me communicate with clients. I had developed resilience and determination that served me well during challenging projects. Finally, trusting your instincts is a practice, not a one-time decision. Throughout my career, I've continued to face moments where I've had to choose between the safe, expected path and the one that felt right but uncertain. Each time I've chosen to trust my gut, I've gotten better at recognizing and following my instincts. The decision to trust my instincts and change majors had effects that went far beyond my career choice. It changed how I approach relationships, financial decisions, and major life transitions. It gave me confidence to speak up in situations where I might have previously stayed quiet. It helped me develop a stronger sense of self that isn't dependent on other people's approval. But perhaps most importantly, it inspired other people in my life to trust their own instincts. My cousin eventually left her corporate job to become a teacher, despite family pressure to stay in finance. A friend from college started her own business after years of talking about it but being too scared to take the leap. My younger brother chose a college based on fit rather than prestige, despite pressure to attend a more prestigious school. When people ask me about these decisions, I always tell them that I'm not advocating for reckless abandon or ignoring sound advice. What I'm advocating for is developing the courage to listen to that inner voice that knows you better than anyone else does. Your instincts have access to information that your logical mind might miss. They pick up on subtle cues about what energizes you versus what drains you. They recognize patterns about what kinds of environments and challenges bring out your best versus worst qualities. They understand your values and priorities in ways that might be difficult to articulate but are absolutely real. The key is learning to distinguish between instincts and fears, between intuition and wishful thinking, between genuine inner guidance and external pressures that you've internalized. Today, 5 years after graduation, I'm working as a senior designer at a company I love, leading projects that challenge and inspire me. I've built a life that feels authentic and fulfilling, surrounded by people who support and understand me. More importantly, I've developed the confidence to continue trusting my instincts as I face new decisions and challenges. When I was offered a promotion that would have meant more money but less creative work, I trusted my gut feeling that it wasn't right for me. When I met my partner, I knew within a few months that this was the person I wanted to build a life with, despite friends who thought we were moving too fast. My relationship with my parents has never been stronger. They've seen firsthand that their daughter, who seemed to be throwing away her future, was actually fighting for it. They've learned to trust my judgment, and I've learned to appreciate their wisdom while still maintaining my independence. The most rewarding part of this journey has been helping other people learn to trust their own instincts. As a mentor to younger designers and through speaking at schools and conferences, I share my story not because I think everyone should change majors or defy their parents, but because I want people to understand that they have an inner wisdom that deserves to be heard and respected. Here's what I wish I had understood when I was 19 and terrified of disappointing everyone. The people who truly love you want you to be happy and fulfilled, even if they don't initially understand the path you're choosing. The people who are more invested in their idea of your life than in your actual happiness aren't the voices you should be listening to. Doubt from others is often a reflection of their own fears and limitations, not an accurate assessment of your potential. When someone tells you that your dreams are unrealistic or impractical, they might be protecting themselves from having to confront their own unfulfilled ambitions. That doesn't mean you should dismiss all feedback or advice. It means you should filter it through your own understanding of who you are and what you want. Take the wisdom that resonates and serves you and let go of the rest. The truth is, there are no guarantees in life. The safe path my parents wanted me to take could have led to burnout, dissatisfaction, or career disappointment just as easily as the risky path I chose. The difference is that my path felt like mine, which gave me the motivation and resilience to navigate whatever challenges came up. If you're reading this because you're facing your own moment of doubt, wondering whether to trust that inner voice that's telling you to take a different path, I want you to know that your instincts are worth listening to. They might not be telling you to change majors or careers, they might be guiding you toward a relationship, a location, a creative project, or a way of living that feels more authentic. The specifics don't matter as much as the principle. You have an inner wisdom that deserves to be heard and respected. Learning to trust it is one of the most valuable skills you can develop, and it's a skill that gets stronger with practice. Start small if you need to. Trust your instincts about what to order at a restaurant, what route to take to work, or what movie to watch. Notice how it feels when you honor that inner guidance versus when you ignore it. Build confidence in your ability to make good decisions for yourself. Pay attention to the difference between instincts and fears. Instincts usually feel calm and certain, even if they're pointing you towards something challenging. Fears usually feel urgent and chaotic, often accompanied by worst-case scenario thinking. Remember that trusting your instincts doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes or face difficulties. It means you'll be making mistakes and facing difficulties on a path that feels authentically yours, which makes all the difference in your ability to persevere and ultimately succeed. The world needs people who are brave enough to trust their inner guidance, because those are the people who innovate, create, and solve problems in ways that others might not think of. Your unique perspective and instincts are not just valuable to you, they're potentially valuable to everyone whose life you touch. So listen to that voice, honor that feeling, trust that inner knowing that's trying to guide you toward the life you're meant to live. It might not be easy, and it might not be what others expect, but it will be yours. And in the end, that's what matters most.